a second. I've accidentally skipped forward. The Newcastle Knights. This is the first one that will really take off for you guys. The level is going up. I'm already getting a bit hot. I might have to chuck an Adam and take the shirt off in a minute. I'll run through the gains and losses just to give everyone a bit of time to breathe, relax, and let's get back into it. Gains, Jed Cartwright from the Rabbitohs.
This is why
Jack
Adam went
Cogger
and got some tissues.
from the Penrith Panthers. Tom Jenkins, sneaky signing there, Penrith Panthers. Kai Pitts, Paul, Wigan, Super League. Will Price, Huddersfield, Super League as well. The losses, quite a big list actually. Falmo, I always get this guy's first name always does me.
Famanu Brown?
Yeah, Brown, Hull, Adam Clune, Huddersfield, Lachlan Fitzgibbon, Warrington, Bailey Hodgson, Sea Eagles, Oren Keeley, spoke about him last week for the Dolphins, Kurt Mann, the Bulldogs, Lachlan Miller, Super League Leeds. I was wishing we saw a bit more of Lachlan Miller actually. Simi Sasagi for the Raiders, and the big one, Dom Young to Sasagi, Dom Young to the Roosters. The re-signings list: Crosland 2026, Frizzell 2026, Dylan Lucas 2025, Marju 2026, and Tuala 2024. So, Jez, I'm going to leave you to last, being the Knights supporter. Micka, I'm going to go to you first. Gains and losses. What do you think of that list?
Yeah, just on that too, I think I saw they reckon Bradman Best is getting pretty close to re-signing for Newcastle, I believe, isn't he? Or has, or will. Yep.
That's pretty much done.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the biggest loss is Dominic Young. That's going to be a very, very big loss. But, I mean, Cogger's going to be a really good – well, there's talk of him – well, a lot of people want him to start. Do you reckon that's going to happen, Jeremy, or what?
I want him to.
No, I don't think he's going to start. The way that the team's kind of shaping up, like they keep saying he's putting pressure on the starters, he's putting pressure on them. But I don't see him taking a starting position just yet.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, I think he's a pretty decent guy, though. So you got him. The re-signings are where it's at for me. Frizzell, Crossland came into form the end of last year. Marzu, I think, has been an absolute beast for him. So yeah, I think most of those losses they had to let go, other than Young.
Yeah, Adam's favourite team that shipped a lot to Super League.
Yeah. Lachlan Fitzgibbon. So the year before, I know I've jumped in, you'll save me till last, but I can't help it. Lachlan Fitzgibbon, probably 2-3 years ago, we were cursing him out, calling it the NIB play. He's only there because of his sponsorships. But then last year, and even the year before, he was outstanding. He played his role perfectly. We actually missed him when he was off the field. So he was injured for a couple of games, and you could actually see that there was quite a big hole attacking and defensively. So for him to actually go over to Warrington, I think he's actually in the peak of his career. So Warrington have picked up a good one in Lachlan Fitzgibbon.
You actually took the words out of my mouth. That's probably the nicest thing I was going to say. But look, those are obviously know I hate the Knights, but Jeremy will see the side of me that is actually fair and calls it as I see it with the Knights. I think Fitzgibbon was ready to go to the Super League. I'm all for shipping players off the Super League, but I don't really think they've filled him in a good way. Like, by the look of it, they're going to replace him with Jed Cartwright, coming from Penrith. I'm guessing Jed Cartwright.
Or Pierce Paul.
He's been everywhere.
Or Pierce Paul.
Pierce Paul. So a Super League player that won't make it over here because no Super League, he won't make it. All right, that's all I'm saying.
Can't even spell his name right. Got T instead of an R.
Patisse.
He was too excited typing it.
I had to look
the R and T are right next to each other on the keyboard, so that's.
Can somebody get straight into the concerns? Can I just get straight into the concerns now?
Hang on, no. Wait.
Okay.
Well, we're going to do it properly this time. So let's rank the signings first. So the signings, the losses.
We've got heaps more to talk about here.
Okay, hang on. All right, I'll bring something up. You mentioned I would start Jack Cogger. I would have him at half.
Oh, is that we've got to the concerns.
I'd have Jack Cogger as my controlling halfback and Hastings 5'8".
So I wasn't allowed to go to concerns, but Joel was. Let's get back to the gains and losses firstly.
Well, we're talking about it because it's a signing.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
It is the sign.
I personally believe the gains don't outweigh the losses here. Looking at their gains, they've gone for depth signings in that regard. None of these players you look at on these lists, besides the blokes that have come from the Super League, where most reserve grade players in the Newcastle, like most reserve grade players in the NRL or New South Wales Rugby League could go across the Super League and start, let's be honest. They haven't replaced, they've just gone for depth. Cogger's not going to start over the fact that Hastings and Gamble took them to the second week of the finals last year, even though they were passengers, to be honest. But he's not going to force his way in there based on that. I'm not concerned yet, but he's not going to. You look at their re-signings. Crosland deserved his re-signing with the year. Frizzell's getting on. Lucas, obviously a young player. Marzu obviously was great with the ball. Defensively, still not isn't that solid. He has never been a strong defender. That's why he changed his name to escape his past. And Tuala barely even saw. For those don't know, Greg Marzu was known as Greg Lazarino, and he was at Parramatta before he went to the Titans. So Aaron Tuala barely saw any football last year. And I actually thought he was one of Newcastle's better players the year before. So once again, lots of depth there, but I don't get it based on the fact that they were average for the majority of last year.
I find it odd that a lot of the signings are depth, especially like even Cogger, wherever you put him, most people rate him as a depth. When even though Big Willie was probably poorly timed when he said it, their halves don't get a start at any other club in the NRL. So why wouldn't they be chasing a legitimate starting half before they're signing depth players?
Yeah,
I agree.
It's a great question. And, when Willie Mason did make those comments, I think everyone kind of went, yeah, you're right. It was ill-timed, but yeah,
Absolutely,
you're right.
Absolutely.
And this Will Price from Huddersfield, he is a fullback or halfback. So they've signed another one to kind of fill that 14 or just play New South Wales Cup. So there are a couple of concerns, I guess, in terms of that sort of depth. But Jack Cogger, you can't, I don't know, for round one, you can't kick out the two halves that Adam said took us to week 2 of the finals, like 10 in a row, and you're just going to go, oh, sorry, one of you won't play. So Cogger will have to force his way into the team. But the thing is, when he gets in there, I don't see him leaving.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the 6 or the 7, I don't see him leaving.
Can you go back and word that correctly? The halves that jumped on a ride of Kalyn Ponga's best year of football and took them to the week 2 of the finals.
Yes, but they're in that starting side, so you don't change that. They don't deserve to get dropped.
Come on, Adam. You remember the halves that took Parramatta to 09 grand final?
That was about to be my exact point when we get to the concerns.
Sean Rudder won a grand final, so
that
I could have won a grand final playing outside of challenge.
That play you mentioned
on that
fullback half, Jeremy. I'm assuming he's there to take the place of Lockie Miller. Because
that was kind of a swap there. And Joel said we wish we saw more of Lockie Miller. We saw enough of Lockie Miller. He burst onto the scene. He was fantastic, but then he got found out very quickly and went very quiet, made a lot of mistakes, and just lost all of his confidence. Found his way back in New South Wales Cup and played well. So that one made sense. He wanted to go and play more first grade rugby league, so off to Super League you go.
So 2 things I want to bring up with this before we give our ratings for the signing stuff. Tom Jenkins, I will say this. He was stuck behind a ridiculous Penrith backline. He's actually a quality player. So people might look at that and go, he was a reserve grader at Penrith. They've signed a reserve grader. No, he is a legitimate first grade player. Any other club last year, he would have been playing majority of the season. He was just unfortunately behind a stacked Penrith side that had Taruva come through, and we all thought Taruva was going to be quite a quality player anyway. So he is a very, very good player. He is not a reserve grader. Jack Cogger was instrumental in the Penrith Panthers winning that grand final last year. So I know, as you say, these 2 playmakers guided you guys to 10 in a row and stuff, and you've all said sort of it could have been passengers as well. I won't go disrespectfully and say they were passengers. They were clearly good players and playing good football. But they didn't get the Knights to the grand final. No, I'm not saying you did. But they didn't get the Knights to the grand final. I didn't say that either. Where Cogger actually stepped up on the biggest stage of rugby league, the NRL grand final, and he was one of the best players on the field when he came on, and he was one of the differences. So I can understand you don't want to change too much, but at the same time, you want to start very well. And for mine, that means having Hastings and Cogger in your halves to benefit and maximize the start. Because the other thing you got to worry about, I know Ponga's fit at the moment and he looks really good, but we spoke about it a few times already this off season. He's one head knock away, and if that happens early on, they need to have someone like Jack Cogger step up and take over that team for that game that Ponga's out, and have that attacking spark and that person who goes, let's just relax, guys. Let's get through what we need to get through and get moving again, which I think Jack Cogger's now matured enough to become that player.
I just want to
absolutely, and that's why I said once he's in, he's in. He will not, once he makes that spot his, once he gets that opportunity, they will not be kicking him out.
So on that, once he's in, he's in. You think he's the best player for the position? Like, shouldn't you have
and it doesn't make sense as I'm saying it out loud.
Yeah, shouldn't you have him on the park as early as you can, knowing how important?
All right, gamble out, Cogger in.
There we go. We got there.
Can we go back to what Joel said about Cogger in the grand final? And it's one thing coming into a grand final when your team's getting comfortably beat, playing outside of Nathan Cleary. And let's be honest, they weren't playing the Penrith style of football in that grand final that got them the win. It's completely different being a settled halfback, having to control a team around by yourself, week in, week out. And I've known Jack for a long time. I've played Oztag with him. I've been coached by him, like refereed, everything like that at long times. Jack left Newcastle because, no, it's true though, but Jack left Newcastle because he wasn't up to playing first grade at Newcastle. He went away to the Bulldogs, got an opportunity there. Newcastle told him he wasn't going to be good enough. Simple as that. He was never going to be a controlling half. Went across. Obviously, he's done some wonderful things at Penrith, but I look through their lists and concerns. I'd be worried if I'm a Newcastle fan at their depth in the halves because, as being touched on, they relied on Ponga so much last year. If Ponga, I'm going to compare it back to, I know Mike would have said the same thing. The Parramatta Eels of 2010. In 2009, Jared Hayne, who we can't mention, but we're going to mention, guided Parramatta to a grand final on the back of some pretty average halves. And no disrespect, then they played a lot of footy, but they didn't really go on to much after that. Now, you had Jeff Robson, who come on as pretty much a reserve grade player from Manly, come to Parramatta. You had
Daniel Mortimer,
who we thought was going to be great, but didn't go on to much else. The year after,
really pretty eyes.
He did,
yes. He did got a premiership ring, yeah. But Parramatta the year after, all teams did was mark up Jared Hayne and put pressure on him. I don't think that Kalyn Ponga in his career and with his injuries and head knocks he's had consistently can be the man that's marked every game. Every single time he gets hit late or, a bit high or whatever, he seems to go off or lay down or they seem to come out the trainers seem to check on him. And it's going to happen this year. He's going to be targeted. He's the Dally M Player of the Year, much controversy, and he will be targeted. I don't think Newcastle have the players to step up to that. Whether you put Jack Cogger there or you've got Gamble or you've got Hastings.
So Jez,
but he's also the ninth best player. So it was like with Andrew Johns playing. You take him out, you win the game. So if you base your defensive reads around putting as much pressure as you can on Kalyn Ponga and limiting his time on the ball, then you're going to do well to beat the Newcastle Knights. But I don't know. I think a conversation around Dane Gagai in his contract. So I don't even think they've even said anything about what's going to happen with him in the future at the Newcastle Knights.
Maybe a wait and see.
It will be a wait and see. And I think they might give Dane the opportunity to maybe call time himself. But he's also, he's not playing terrible rugby league. But if there's someone that could be playing better rugby league in his position, you've probably got to, get out of the way. And, sorry, in the off contract, I spelt this guy's name wrong. It's Brodie fucking Jones. And he should be signed until 2030 because he is the life. I love Brodie fucking Jones.
He is.
And every time he comes on, everyone around me knows it. So
you're very lucky him forever. Very lucky he didn't go South City this year. Just on that off contract, David Armstrong's going to the Super League. Brodie fucking Jones. But thank you. David Armstrong, Newcastle's leading try scorer in the New South Wales Cup, fullback, winger, centre, off to the Super League.
Lee Leopards. Yep.
Heard it here first. Once again, guys, this is why you tune into League of Interest shows because we just breaking news every time. We have inside information, especially when it comes to the Knights.
One more point on the Newcastle Knights.
Hang on. I want you to answer this question because we have encouraged viewers to get involved.
Okay.
I think this is a very valid point for you. Does the Knights have the same problem Manly have? Do they rely on Ponga as much as Manly rely on Turbo? Is this a concern for you? Because it's a pretty valid point, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it is. I don't like to say that we're a one-man team, but we're pretty bloody close to it. So, yeah, I don't know if we're at the same sort of...
Stop. You've got Brody fucking Jones. You're a two-man team.
Oh, sorry. No, we're winning the comp. We've got Brody fucking Jones. Yeah, look, we are in similar territory to Turbo. Where Manly don't have Turbo, it takes out a whole lot of their attacking power. They also have Daly Cherry Evans in the halves, though. So they've got a bit more across the board where we really heavily rely on one bloke. So we might even be in more of dire straits if Kalyn Ponga's not on the field in comparison to Manly. That was when Lockie Miller stood up last time and played some really outstanding rugby league at fullback. But who knows? Maybe this Will Price might be the guy that fills the void if needed.
Yeah, could be. Are we ready to get onto the ratings and rankings?
I did have one more point, though, for the Newcastle Knights. We've surpassed 24,000 members, which is humongous. It just shows what one good year and what a player that you can build a club around can do to put bums on seats. So that is outstanding. And just in comparison, in 2010, we only had 5,000 members.
How many people live in Newcastle?
My father and I were one of them. So individual memberships.
Hang on. How many people live in Newcastle?
Hang on, Martin Brothers. I'm going to stop here and say,
well,
I know you what you're both going to come with some hate here, and it's going to take over your personal interest. But I will applaud that because there is no doubt in my mind. Hang on. There is no doubt in my mind. The Newcastle fans are one of the best in the game, and there is almost no better sight than a Sunday Arvo, that Knights stadium packed out. I still have that vision of Dom Young scoring that try last year and the crowd just all erupting. Honestly, it was one of the best things we've seen last year. I feel like
it was electric.
You've never been abused by Mavis. You've never been abused by Mavis from Mayfield.
Mavis and Mayfield. How many people live in Newcastle? It's a genuine question. How many people live in Newcastle?
It's about 1 million in the whole Newcastle, Maitland, Hunter Valley area.
For a one team town, I would have thought their membership numbers would be higher than some of the Sydney teams.
322,000 apparently, just in the Newcastle area.
In Newcastle, you got other areas, Maitland, Port Stephens, Lake Macquarie. I believe, and this goes for every fan as well.
How many live in Parramatta?
No one in Parramatta supports Parramatta, mate. I believe you're crazy not to be an NRL member if you're going to get to more than 5 or 6 games. I'm going to give the points of that. My Parramatta membership, I think, costs $450 for the season. It's $72 to sit in the seats I looked at the other day when tickets went on sale. So you make 6 games. Obviously, you get your merchandise and stuff included as well, your bumper stickers, stuff like that. And you pay for your season. So for a town like Newcastle, where it's obviously easier to get to games, you're crazy not to be a member. So those memberships should be higher.
But also, it's a massive shout out to the women's team. They have added those numbers dramatically as well, and their success, the memberships are on the back of that as well. So hats off to the ladies. They are definitely contributing massively to the membership numbers here in Newcastle.
Yeah,
and a quick shout out.
And I'll be impartial this time. Newcastle being a working town with a lot of weekend workers and shift workers and stuff would be a lot of the reason why a lot of the people that I mentioned before with my smartass comment aren't actual members. Because it's very hard to get to games when you've got to work a lot of weekends.
Absolutely.
Just on a quick point that Jez just made, I just want to let everyone know while they are listening, the interviews part of League of Inches is returning very soon as well in the next couple of weeks. And I've spoken to a couple of the Knights girls already who are keen to jump on and have a bit of a chat about last year and then things how they're looking this year as well. So really cool and keen to see those interviews. Now let's give our ratings and rankings because I know there's a lot of Para fans waiting and that is the next team. And honestly, we told you this episode will be a longer one. The way it's going, we could be till midnight. again, I will start at Micka actually this time and work down and then back up, and we'll finish on Jez. Micka, we'll go both at the same time. So your rankings for the gains and losses part of things, and then where you think they'll finish that bracket.
Well, I gave Melbourne a 6, didn't I? I guess I got to give Newcastle a 5 because Dominic Young's a massive loss, and I think they should have been chasing halves harder. Where I think they'll finish is I think they're going to be one of the 2 teams that slide out of the 8, because I don't think Ponga, despite I think he's a fantastic player and he was in great form, I don't think he can do that again 2 years in a row. As I said last week, any team without 2 top line halves in the NRL, I don't think can win a grand final anyway.
Yeah, I'm giving them a 4. As stated earlier, just due to the fact that they've gone for the depth and what they've released. They've released some pretty big players when you look at that list. Obviously, helped them a long way in the last couple of years. So giving them a 4. Look, we give them a bit of a benefit there for some of the re-signings. I just want to make one more comment about the Knights, and it's not a bad one, but it's in regards to something that could probably help Ponga in a way. I know I've obviously bagged it at half, so is Michael, and I felt that for a while, but I think something that can really help Newcastle this year is seeing a fit, and I can't get his right name, but Jaden Brayley. I was going to say Braden because I always get him confused, but Jaden Brayley on the field. He's been probably one of the most unluckiest blokes in rugby league world in the last, 3 years since he's been at Newcastle, 2-3 years, however long it's been. He's had every injury under the sun. So he's a good player. It was obviously the better brother when they come to at Cronulla, and we've seen how good his brother has been. So getting him on the field, I think, will help Newcastle massively. And they kind of haven't had it. Well, they haven't had that last 2-3 years where they've had a genuine hooker there. Really. Yep. I know Crosland did a great job for Newcastle last year, but he's not a genuine creative hooker. He's just quick out of dummy half. So that'll help their halves massively if they get him there, because I believe there is some weaknesses in their forward patch where he can get a bit of a roll on as well. Where I think they'll finish, as touched on earlier, 9-12. I've got the Dolphins ending their season in the last week, as stated last week. But it's the same thing. I just think there's too much pressure on Ponga. And look, if he comes out and takes them to a top 8 spot again, we'll be talking about how good he is at the end of the year. But I think it's just going to be too much for him to back it up. And I think last year as well, which I haven't hid from saying, they were touched on the dick a bit with that run home. They obviously had a pretty easy run home. And even when they played some of the harder teams, you look at, they beat Melbourne at home, they beat South Sydney at home, Cronulla at home, but they were all at home. Had a good run of home games against the harder teams, and they played the weaker teams away. So let's not forget they were sitting. Jeremy, where were they sitting before we went and watched them smash the Bulldogs? Like 12th or 13th or something like that? Maybe 14th?
Yeah.
They obviously went on a massive run, but
third last at one point, I think.
Yeah, the hardest game they had was playing the Dolphins in Perth, who were struggling at the time, and they really should have lost that game. They found a way to pull it out their ass.
Yeah. I will give them a rating of 5.5 for the recruitment side of things. I do really like Jack Cogger and Tom Jenkins as signings. And from what I've heard about Kai Pearce-Paul, I think he might break that trend of English players struggling. I actually have been told quite reliably as well that he is quite a player. So really, and it's likely within the first few weeks he'll nail down that starting edge spot as well. So really keen to see how he goes. Even Will Price, if he does get a chance, keen to see what he's got. My predicted finish, I don't want it to be a jump on here, but I actually have, just because of the teams that I think are improving as well, I just couldn't. I tried to find a spot in my 8 for him because I wanted to be with Jez a little bit. I knew what was coming with the Martin boys. I just can't. So I've got to put him in the 9-12 as well. I'm just a bit worried on how much they rely on Ponga at the moment. Not saying that a lot of their squad is still quality players. I just think a lot of the other teams around him, even back half of the 8 and out of the 8 from last year, have improved quite well. And even teams like the Titans and the Dolphins, I think, have improved immensely, and that'll put pressure on the Knights as well. Jez, final say on your team?
Yeah, well, I bleed red and blue, have for a very long time, and hopefully my son and future offspring do as well, so I can keep the tradition going of sitting on the hill and watching the Knights play, hopefully with 3 generations. So I've given them a 6 for the recruitment. and it's purely over just a little bit of excitement about the new blood coming in. I think Cogger coming home is outstanding, and I'm going to renege on everything I said. Let's see him start round 1, because why not? I think Phoenix Crosland getting re-signed is huge for him and his effort that he put in. He really developed as a player, as Adam said, but it was more defensively that I was super impressed with. He missed hardly any tackles. Playing in the middle of the field for 80 minutes, he was great. So, yeah, I've given him a 6, and I've probably got my red and blue glasses on here. But I just think with the momentum, with the members, with the home crowd, I believe every home game is going to be near to a sellout. I've got him in the top 4.
We knew it was coming. We knew it was coming on that.
Can I add one? Can I add one more thing to that? I just can't wait. I can't wait till the end of the year to see 23,998 disappointed members.
Let's not get like that.
I was being nice to Jeremy and his father there when I said 23,998.
I want to see Jeremy on the hill with a sign that says "Rise of the Phoenix" after that talk about Phoenix Crosland.
Good bloke too.
Let's move.
He was hilarious.